You're listening to a special 8-part mini-series on leading change in public education, using John Kotter's 8-step framework as a guide for our current moment in schools. In the last episode, we looked at Step 5, enabling action by removing obstacles, the work of clearing schedules, processes, rules, and habits so willing people can actually move. Today, we're moving to Step 6, generating short-term wins, and we'll stay grounded in 2 concrete examples throughout the series: strengthening MTSS, and redesigning student support and discipline so staff can sustain the work over time. In this episode, you'll hear how this step fits into the larger 8-step arc, why it matters in systems where people are already tired and skeptical, and what it looks like to design early gains that show up both in what the system can count and in what people can actually feel in their day.
Welcome to Little Bits of TLC, the podcast where we explore the dynamic world of education. Join our host, Heather Volchko, as this season we're exploring what it takes to lead meaningful change in public education through the lens of John Kotter's 8-step framework for change. Across the next 8 episodes, we'll connect each step of Kotter's model to the realities schools face every day. From building urgency and developing a shared vision to sustaining changes over time, we'll explore practical strategies for creating systems that support both students and educators. Drawing from real-world experiences across school systems, each episode is designed not only to introduce new ideas, but to help turn them into actions through discussion guides your teams can use throughout your very own local change processes. If you're trying to lead change in a system that often feels both overloaded and under-supported, you're in the right place. Let's explore how we can create meaningful, lasting change in public education together. This is Little Bits of TLC.
By this point in the miniseries, quite a lot has happened. In episode 1, the focus was urgency, the shared recognition that the current way of working is putting too much strain on adults, producing too much inconsistency for students, and limiting the impact schools are trying to achieve. In episode 2, attention turned to the guiding coalition, the cross-roll group of people who are trusted, committed, and positioned to influence real decisions. Episode 3 described forming a clear vision and a small set of initiatives, answering the question, what exactly are we trying to build in our systems and what major moves will take us there? Episode 4 focused on enlisting a volunteer army, inviting many more people into the work in ways that feel like an opportunity rather than one more obligation. And episode 5 was about enabling action by removing obstacles, taking on schedules, policies, forms, tools, and norms that quietly block willing people from acting. If those 5 steps go well, something powerful is in motion. People see the need, a credible group is leading and the direction is clearer, more staff are leaning in, the path is less cluttered, and yet a question often rises a few months into the journey. It sounds like this: is any of this actually working? That question is especially sharp in systems where staff have lived through many past efforts. They have given extra energy before, they have sat through planning meetings before, they have heard this time will be different before, so they watch, they listen. And by mid-year, many quietly ask themselves, can I point to anything that has actually changed in ways I can see and feel? This is where Kotter's 6th step comes in, generating short-term wins. Kotter describes wins as the molecules of results that must be recognized, collected, and communicated early and often to track progress and energize people to persist. Short-term wins are visible, believable improvements that appear within months, not years. They are the early signals that this work is not just a plan on paper. In public education, those wins have to operate on 2 levels. They need to show up in what the system can count, and they need to show up in what people can feel and say about their work. In other words, they need to be both quantitative and qualitative. If the numbers move but daily life feels unchanged, staff may dismiss the data as spin. If daily life feels a bit better, but leaders have no evidence to point to, the work becomes harder to defend in budget meetings, board conversations, and public discussions. This episode is about how to design short-term wins that do both. It begins with a familiar scene. Imagine a district that has spent a year building out its MTSS framework. The guiding coalition has met regularly, forms have been redesigned, principals have attended trainings, new data views have been built. As winter arrives, the central leadership team meets with teachers, counselors, and school leaders from several buildings and asks, where have you seen this work make a difference so far? There is a long pause. One teacher says, I think our meetings are a little more structured. And a counselor says, I know who to email now, so that helps. A principal says we have more lists. No one is being cynical. They just cannot point to clear gains. Staff are still waiting weeks for support after raising concerns. Students with intensive needs are still caught in repeated crisis cycles. The workload still feels scattered. And in that moment, it does not matter how thoughtful the vision is or how many hours the coalition has put in. Without visible wins, people begin to doubt. That is not a sign that they are uncommitted. It is a sign that they are human. Short-term wins serve several functions in a system like this. They matter psychologically. For staff who have lived through cycles of hope and disappointment, an early win is proof that their effort is not being wasted. It pushes back against the storyline that nothing ever really changes here. Wins also matter for leaders. They are feedback. They show that the direction is sound, or they reveal that the design still needs adjustment. If the first wave of change produces no genuine gains, that may be a sign that the focus is off, that impediments remain too high, or that the work is not yet reaching the places it needs to. Short-term wins also matter organizationally. District leaders are often asked to show evidence that a new approach is worth continued investment. Boards, families, and local partners want to know what is different. Wins provide concrete examples to point to. And perhaps most importantly right now, wins matter for sustainability. When early wins make work more coherent and manageable, they do more than signal progress, and they give staff a reason to keep going that is rooted in their own experience. And so what do meaningful short-term wins look like in MTSS and student support? They are not dramatic, system-wide transformations. They are specific, local improvements that people can count and feel. Sometimes they are intentionally modest. A team may not transform an entire discipline system in one semester, but cutting one unnecessary step from a weekly support routine or reducing the time it takes for a teacher to get a clear next step after raising concern can be small and still matter a great deal. That modesty is not a weakness. It is part of what makes a win believable. Take this example. In 2 pilot elementary schools, the district sets a clear aim. By mid-year, no student in those schools should wait more than 2 weeks between a documented concern and a concrete plan for support. At the start of the year, the median time in those buildings is about 6 weeks. Concerns are raised, emails are sent, conversations happen, but formal plans take time. Teachers feel this delay. They say things like, I brought this up a month ago and I still do not know what is happening. The guiding coalition, working with building leaders, designs changes. They streamline the referral steps. They establish a predictable twice-monthly MTSS meeting schedule for each school. They clarify who owns which parts of the process. They remove an internal rule that required extra approvals for routine support plans. They also ask the data team to track the time from first documented concern to the first Tier 2 support action in those 2 schools. Over the course of the semester, the numbers begin to shift. By January, the median time in one school has dropped from 6 weeks to about 2. In the other, it is closer to 2.5. The numbers are not perfect. Some cases still take longer, but the change is real, and the people in those schools feel it. One teacher says, I raised a concern in September and had a concrete plan in place before the end of the month. That has never happened that fast before. The counselor says our meetings feel like they actually lead to action now. Before we would talk and talk. Now we leave with assignments and those assignments get done. Those are short-term wins. The quantitative indicator, a shorter time to support, is visible and simple. The qualitative evidence, what staff say about their experience, confirms that the numbers reflect something real. We'll take another example, this time at the secondary level. A middle school has a small group of students whose names appear constantly in office visit logs. Every week, teachers send them out for similar concerns. Every week, administrators and staff respond in similar ways. Removals accumulate, but the pattern does not change. The district chooses this cohort as a focus for early wins. The guiding coalition, building leaders and support staff design more coordinated Tier 2 supports for these students. They create shared schedules for support. They clarify who checks in with each student and when. They identify 1 or 2 alternatives to immediate removal that staff can use within clear safety boundaries. They track the number of repeated office visits and removals for this group over the next 3 months. At the start, the cohort has dozens of repeated visits each month. By the second quarter, repeated visits have dropped in a noticeable way. The reduction is not identical for every student, but it is measurable. Staff feel a difference. An assistant principal says, I am still busy, but I am not seeing the same 5 students 10 times a week. We have a plan, and when things go wrong, we adjust the plan instead of starting from scratch. A paraprofessional who supports one of the students says, transitions are calmer in that hallway now. We have the same routine every day and everyone knows their part. Again, the numbers and the stories work together. The quantitative shift tells a story about fewer repeated crises. The qualitative shift tells a story about daily life becoming slightly more predictable and less draining. Yet another example focuses on clarity for staff. In one district, surveys show that many teachers are not confident they know how to access support for students with increasing needs. On a staff survey, fewer than half of respondents agree with the statement, "I know the steps to take when I have ongoing concerns about a student's behavior or engagement." The coalition and a group of building leaders decide to make this a short-term target. They work with teachers to rewrite the MTSS access steps into a single page, a simple visual that shows what to do, who to contact, and what to expect at each stage. They introduce this one-page flow to 2 pilot middle schools at the start of the semester. They practice using it in grade-level meetings. They ask staff to use it for every new concern for 3 months. Then they ask again through a brief survey and a small set of interviews. This time, a clear majority of staff in those schools agree that they know the steps. Several mention the one-page visual by name. A grade-level team lead says, "We do not spend half the meeting trying to figure out who should do what anymore. We just follow the steps and adjust when we need to." The win here is not only the improved survey item, it is a shift in how meetings feel. They move from scattered and confusing to clearer and more useful. A fourth example centers on time. Earlier in the series, episode 5 described how important it is to protect time for the new work. Imagine a district that has designated a monthly MTSS block during the contract day. At first, not all schools use that time as intended. Some buildings repurpose it for other topics. Others cancel it when schedules get tight. The coalition and central office decide to make meaningful use of that block an early win. They clarify expectations, they provide simple agendas and examples. They ask schools to document how the time is used, which students are discussed, what plans are made, what follow-up is assigned. Over a semester, they track participation. By mid-year, most schools are using at least 3/4 of the MTSS block for actual student support work. The district gathers examples. In one building, the principal shares that the monthly block has become the primary place where staff align support plans, reducing the number of ad hoc meetings. In another, a teacher notes that having a predictable time for problem solving has cut down on hallway crisis huddles. Again, the district can count something, and people can feel something if that combination matters. We'll come back in a moment to how leaders can design these wins on purpose rather than simply hope they show up.
Attention school leaders. Have you ever had a student whose behavior seems to leave everyone asking the same question? Why is this happening? Maybe your team has tried different strategies, but it still feels like you're reacting instead of working from a clear understanding of what's driving the behavior. That's where the Navigators come in. Navigate Function First is TLC's intern initiative, designed to help districts better understand challenging student behavior and equip them to build support plans that are based on evidence, not guesswork. Through a team of carefully supervised BCBA or IBA interns and experienced school-based behavior analysts, we help organize information, analyze behavioral patterns, and provide practical recommendations your staff can actually use. This isn't about taking over your process or adding more work for your team. It's about partnering with your district to connect the dots, streamline your functional behavioral assessment process, and move everyone forward with greater confidence and clarity. Whether you're trying to better understand one student's behavior or strengthen how your district approaches complex cases, the Navigators are here to help. Email us at navigate@tlcnonprofit.co or learn more by visiting tlcnonprofit.co/thenavigators. That's tlcnonprofit.co/thenavigators. Collaborative analysis, actionable results. The Navigators of TLC. Looking for something that actually fits your life? TLC University is here for that. Each week, we spotlight something different. A webinar with real-world insights, a hangout-style interview, and a hands-on workshop or a Q&A where we answer your questions. It's flexible, it's self-paced, and most come with CEUs. So whether you're looking to grow, reflect, or just listen in, there's something here for you. And it's all in one place. university.thresholdlearning.org. That's where you'll find show notes, professional blogs, a full catalog of ACE-accredited courses, and downloadable resources. It all just keeps growing. So whether you're walking the dog, commuting, or taking a breather between the daily grind, TLC University meets you where you are. Head to university.thresholdlearning.org and check out what's new this week. See you then.
Let's get back to how this plays out on the ground and what it means for your change work this year. Meaningful short-term wins almost never happen by accident. They have to be designed. At the district level, that means sitting down and asking a very practical question. What 2 or 3 gains do we want to be able to point to within the next semester? And for each one, what will we count and what will we listen for? That second question is where the mixed methods mindset matters. If the coalition says we want to reduce the time from first concern to first support action, the measurement cannot stop at a timeline metric. Leaders also need to ask what staff experience will tell us whether this is real. Do teachers say they feel clearer about what happens after they raise a concern? Do counselors describe meetings as more purposeful? Do principals say they are spending less time untangling confusion? The same is true in reverse. If leaders say we want staff to feel that meetings are more coherent, that cannot remain only a feeling. What observable change should go with it? Are follow-up tasks happening faster? Are fewer concerns disappearing into email chains? Are fewer students cycling through the same reactive responses? This is what makes a win believable. It is not only a number, and it is not only a story. It is a number that means something paired with a story that shows why it matters. Once the coalition identifies those wins, the next move is to work backward. If we want time to support down by half by January, what has to change in September? Do we need clearer meeting schedules, simpler referral steps, a better role clarity? If we want staff to report clearer access, what needs to happen this month? Do we need to introduce the one-page flow, practice it in meetings, and remove older conflicting procedures? If we want repeated office visits to drop for a small group of students, what support plans, coaching, and alternatives need to be in place by the next grading period? From there, the district can identify pilot sites. Not every school has to lead every change at once. Choosing a small number of schools or teams where leadership is supportive and conditions are right can increase the chance of early wins. These are not favorite schools. They are proof points. They may receive a bit more coaching, a bit more calendar flexibility, or a bit more direct partnership with the coalition. The expectation is that when wins appear, they will be shared, not hoarded. As wins emerge, communication matters. Kotter's language is helpful here too. He argues that wins must be recognized, collected, and communicated early and often to track progress and energize people to persist. That is especially true in schools. When leaders share wins, they should be concrete. Instead of saying our MTSS work is going well, they might say, in 2 schools, we have cut the time from first concern to a support plan from about 6 weeks to about 2. Teachers in those buildings are telling us they can feel the difference because they are not waiting nearly as long to see movement. Instead of saying we are reducing discipline issues, they might say, for a group of students who are visiting the office again and again, we put coordinated Tier 2 and Tier 3 supports in place. Over 3 months, repeated visits dropped, and the assistant principal reports spending more time in classrooms and less time on the same emergency. Instead of saying staff are more aware of MTSS, they might say in 2 pilot middle schools, most teachers now say they know the steps to take when a student's needs increase. Before the one-page flow, that was not the case. Grade level teams are telling us that meetings are more focused and less confusing. Each example pairs a metric with a voice. It avoids exaggeration. It acknowledges that there is still more to do, and it points to system changes, not just extra effort. There are a few pitfalls to avoid here. One is declaring victory too early. When an early win appears, it can be tempting to treat it as proof that the whole system is now strong. In reality, these wins are proof that the direction has promise, not that the journey is complete. Another pitfall is choosing wins that staff cannot feel. If leaders celebrate small shifts in distant metrics that do not match daily experience, staff become more skeptical. A third pitfall is manufacturing wins. That might look like cherry-picking data, overstating what happened, or rebranding routine variance as success. Once staff sense that wins are being exaggerated, trust erodes. A fourth pitfall is over-extracting from pilot sites. If pilot schools or teams are pushed so hard to produce wins that their workload becomes unsustainable, early gains may come at the cost of burnout. And a final pitfall is keeping wins too quiet. Sometimes out of caution or modesty, leaders share early success only with a small inner circle. Meanwhile, staff in other buildings assume nothing is working. To bring this step into practical focus, consider a few moves leaders can make in the near term. With the guiding coalition, choose 2 or 3 short-term wins that matter most for your change effort in the next semester. For each, name 1 or 2 simple metrics and 1 or 2 experience markers. For example, this many days down, paired with teachers describing meetings as more useful, then identify 1 or 2 pilot sites or teams for each win and be explicit about what support and relief they will receive. That might mean adjusting schedules, providing coaching, or simplifying amplifying expectations elsewhere. And finally, plan how you will capture the story of each win. Who will gather the data? Who will collect the quotes, survey items, or short reflections? Who will help turn those pieces into a simple, honest narrative you can share? As you reflect on this step, a few questions may help. If you asked staff today, where has this work made your day more manageable or more coherent? How many concrete examples would they have? Are your early wins easing the load on staff or just making it easier to measure the same strain? Which potential win, if achieved and communicated clearly, would be enough to convince your most skeptical principal or teacher to keep investing? Short-term wins are not the whole story, but they are often the part of the story that people believe. They are how staff decide whether this change is real and whether it is worth staying with. Kotter's sixth step reminds leaders that wins are the earliest visible evidence that change is producing results and that those results have to be recognized and communicated often enough to build energy for the next stretch of work. In the next episode, the focus will shift to sustaining acceleration. Once early wins appear, the temptation is to ease off and assume the job is largely done. The next step is about using the credibility and energy from those wins to keep pressing forward without exhausting the people doing the work.
This episode is one part of an 8-step journey through John Kotter's change framework, applied to the real conditions of public education today. We've explored step 6, generating short-term wins, building on the obstacles we've cleared, and the people who've stepped in and laying the groundwork for keeping momentum going. If you'd like to go deeper, you can find show notes, transcripts, and discussion guides for each episode at university.thresholdlearning.org. They're designed so you can use this series with leadership teams, MTSS teams, and building level groups as you plan for the coming school year. And if you want to go back to the source, John Kotter's most recent book, Change: How Organizations Achieve Hard-to-Imagine Results in Uncertain and Volatile Times, offers the core ideas this mini-series is built on. This series is a field-level reflection on how those ideas can look in MTSS and student support work. In the next episode, we'll turn to step 7, sustaining acceleration, and look at how to keep building on those wins without drifting backward or burning people out.
Hey, before you jump back into your busy life, consider following at Threshold Learning TLC on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram, and Little Bits of TLC on TikTok, YouTube, and Threads. If you enjoyed today's episode, consider sharing the podcast with a colleague. Personal recommendations are one of the best ways to help other educators discover the show. You can find Little Bits of TLC on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Just be sure to follow or subscribe on your favorite platform so you never miss a new episode. You can also email us at podcast@thresholdlearning.org. We always enjoy connecting with fellow educators and champions for educational justice. For everything else, including our programs, resources, and professional learning opportunities, visit university.thresholdlearning.org. That's university.thresholdlearning.org. See you there.